All right, good evening. Tonight we are going to learn Parshas Vayeshev. And in this week's Parsha, we are beginning the story of the saga between Yosef and his brothers. The story of Yosef and his brothers is a story that is very intriguing. And as a child, that story really captivated my mind. I did intensive studying of that story, and I really wanted to know more details about what exactly happened between Yosef and his brothers. It's something that really took me, my imagination, my childish imagination, took me to Yosef and his brothers always. And I remember one time there was a question, which one of the sages would you like to see in the end of days when everybody will be resurrected? So every kid said, this one said they want to see King David, another one said he wants to see Abraham. I said I want to see Yosef. There's something about Yosef, a tzaddik, and whatever he went through over there with his brothers and being in Egypt, his entire story always really captivated my imagination. And this year, as part of the studying of every year, studying the Parsha and spending time throughout the week of studying the story, this year, as I was reading the opening verses of the story, something really caught my mind. And that was the term that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk today about jealousy. The topic of jealousy is the topic of tonight. And as we wrote in the email, we're going to talk about holy jealousy. And we'll see soon a wonderful new teaching that I don't think I ever taught in any of my classes. And actually, I just studied it probably for the first time this week. And I'm very excited to share tonight's class with all of you. There is a Jewish anecdote or Jewish joke about this Jewish old lady who is reading the Parsha of the week in Yiddish. You know, in Yiddish used to be a book called Tzenerene. Tzenerene was a translation of the Parsha of the week in the Medrash in Yiddish. So in the olden days, my grandmother, even my mother, my grandmother especially, every Friday night, they read customary Tzenerene to read the Parsha of the week the way it's written out in Yiddish. And she was reading the story of the Yosef and his brothers, and every year she used to start crying in anguish about this, that the brothers are selling Yosef and they are so mean to him and they're so nasty in their behavior. And then one year she was reading the story and she's like, this year I'm not crying. I'm not crying for him. He should have known from last year not to go there. And he's that stupid. He keeps on going back. I'm not crying for him anymore. So this is just an opening joke for the story of Yosef and his brothers. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to spend a great deal discussing the story of Yosef and his brothers. And we're going to be spending the next couple of weeks as the story unfolds, all the way down to the end of the book of Genesis, where finally Yosef and his brothers are having their great meeting together. They see each other, they meet together. That's the grand finale, is where Yosef tells his brothers who he is, and so on and so forth. But now we're holding at the beginning of the unfolding of everything. It's the beginning of the story. And something caught my eye that I want to share with you. And I did a little study on it this week. And I'm really excited to share it with you tonight. So the story begins as follows. Some of you remember that story from previous years. Some of you remember the story from Hebrew school. The Torah starts telling us about the relationship between Yosef and his brothers. So Yosef is 17 years old. Okay? He's a young teenager. He's 17 years old. He used to hang out with his brothers while they were pasturing their sheep. And the Torah says that he used to come and bring to his father bad news about his brothers. He used to say all sorts of things about their behavior that was inappropriate, certain things that they were doing that was not okay, hoping that his father will rebuke the brothers. One thing was, he would tell the father that he saw them eating Evam and Achai. They were eating meat of an animal before the animal died. Another thing he said that the brothers were calling the children who were born from the maids, they were calling them servants. He was bringing all those stories to his father, and the Torah tells us that Israel, Yaakov, loved Yosef more than all his children because he was his child that was born in his old age. And he made him a special tunic made out of all sorts of colors. Soinus pasim. Now, the Torah tells us what happened as a result of that. As a result of him telling his father all those bad things, tattletaling, and telling all the stuff that they do bad. And as a result of the father buying him this beautiful, colorful coat, what happened as a result of that? Says the Torah, they saw the brother saw that he's being loved more than all of them. The Torah tells us, so they hated him. Hatred. And they couldn't talk to him in peace. And Rashi tells us that there's actually a teaching here that we learn about how special his brothers were, that they weren't passive aggressive. They weren't double-faced. They hated him, and they didn't act towards him like nice guys anymore. The hatred was on the inside and on the outside. They weren't double-faced. That actually is a virtue. Yeah. The virtue is that they were not double-faced. They weren't talking for two sides of their mouth. They couldn't fake it. Their hatred was real, and therefore it resulted in their behavior of not being able to talk to him in words of peace. Okay. Then the Torah begins to tell us about his dreams. Okay, and here we are being introduced to another part of Yosef's relationship with his brothers, where he's telling them dreams that he's having. And the Torah tells us about two dreams that he has. First, Yosef as a dream, he tells his brothers, and the Torah right away says again, and they hated him even more. Vayeshev oid snoyoisoi. They hated him even more. So you have a second time already the term hatred. Okay, so there's hatred in the beginning. Then again, the Torah tells us they were even more hateful of him. That didn't hold him back from sharing his dream. And he tells them the dream. What is the dream? Dream number one, we are standing in a field and we are all creating bundles out of wheat. And my bundle is standing upright. And all your bundles are bowing down to my bundle. The brothers hear this dream and they immediately erupt with great upsetness, and they turn to him and they say, excuse me, are you going to be king over us? Abashel Tim Shalbani, you're going to govern over us? And here we have number three, Vayosifu oid snoyoisoi. They had more hatred towards him because of his dreams and because of his thing. So three times within 5 sentences, the Torah tells us three times about their hatred that they had towards him. Pretty strong. But then comes dream number three. He has a second dream. Yeah, dream number two. And over there, it says he tells his brothers about the dream. And he tells them that what is the next dream? The sun and the moon and 11 stars are bowing down to me. Now, that dream, he tells his father and his brothers. And this time, what happens is his father gets angry at him. His father is very upset, and he speaks very roughly towards him. He says, are you basically telling me that we, your mother, all of us will come and bow down to you? And here suddenly the Torah tells us the brothers were jealous of him. Vayekanu boy echov. The brothers were jealous. After 3 times expressions of hatred, Vayisnu, Vayosifusnoi, and again, Oitznoi, 3 times it says they hated even more, they hated even more. After the second dream, suddenly there is not anymore an expression of hatred. Suddenly, it turns into jealousy. It's a very interesting observation. This is the first time that I ever noticed. I'm reading this Parshah since I am a little boy, and I'm 42 years old, and this is the first time that I noticed this. This is why you have to keep on studying Torah every single year, over and over again, because always there will be something that will show up to you and kind of like raise your eyebrows, like what's going on over here. 3 expressions of hatred. The Torah writes 3 times the term sina. Sina means hatred. And then suddenly, from hatred, after the second dream, the hatred moves into a space called jealousy. Interesting. Very interesting to see this observation. And we're going to see in tonight's class what exactly happened after the second dream. Well, just a little interpretation here about the father. It says, "V'aviv shamar es hadover." The father kept, guarded that thing. Meaning to say that although after the first dream, we don't see that the father is set on him. We only see that his brothers are telling him, what do you think? You're going to govern over us? You're going to king over us? We don't see that the father says anything after the first dream. After the second dream, suddenly the father gets upset too. And this time the father gets upset so much that he has to express himself and say, are you out of your mind? We are going to come bow down to you. But then after the Torah tells us that they were all jealous, the Torah tells us the father kept in his mind that dream. Shamar es hadover. There was something that he took note that this is unusual. He put into his mind that this something is going to unfold over here. This is not just a dream, some bubamaises, some vanity. The second dream, for whatever reason, pointed out to Yaakov something very, very serious about his son that he has to pay attention to. So there's something, a shift that happens in the brother's reaction after the second dream. And there's a shift that happens in Yaakov's reaction after the second dream. After the first dream, there is no reaction from Yaakov. Yaakov doesn't say anything. The brothers, after the first dream, are full of hate. What, you're going to king over us? You're going to govern over us? They hated him even more. After the second dream, what happens is the hatred by the brothers turns into jealousy. And the father has a reaction to it. And he says to him, are you going to, are you out of, are your father and your mother going to come bow down to you on earth? What are you thinking to yourself? But at the same time, he takes note about that dream. Shamar es hadover, he's guarding it in his mind. So I want for a second focus here about the transformation from hatred into jealousy. What exactly happened over here? What happened between the first dream and the second dream? Really, if you look at the two dreams, the content, since we already know the rest of the story from last year, we know that he ended up going and his brothers ended up throwing him into a pit, and then they sold him as a slave, and then he arrived to Egypt and he became governor of Egypt, and he became the leader of Egypt, and there's a famine in the land, and the brothers have to go down to Egypt to acquire food, and they have to go purchase their food, and this is where they meet Yosef. So we know already the rest of the story. However, the first dream is basically a dream of food. They're standing in the field, they're creating bundles of wheat, They are preparing their provisions. They are preparing their sources of food. And the dream basically saying is that one day you guys are going to have to come to me for food. I will be the wealthy one. I will be the one who is going to have plenty. I will be the one who will be sustaining you. You're all going to come down, bow down to my bundle. So if you look at the interpretation of the first dream, it's basically more of a dream of describing financial stability on his side and them needing to come to him for their safety, for their food, for their sustenance. Okay, that is upsetting. The brothers are hearing the dream. They're listening to this storyline of them having to bow down to him. Their bundles of wheat have to bow down to his bundle. You know, when it comes to wealth and it comes to money, they are holy people. You know that all the tribes, all of them are very godly people, saintly people. This is children of Yaakov. They're upset, but it's not jealous. What happens in the second dream, suddenly he's talking about the sun and the moon and the stars bowing down to him. The second dream, he's already talking about something more spiritual. He's not anymore talking about the need for food, that they will come to him for food. The second dream, suddenly he's talking about bowing down to him as one of those galaxies in the sky. That the sun and the moon and the stars are bowing down to him. That is already an indication of some great spiritual heights that he is reaching, that his father and his mother and his brothers are going to prostrate themselves down to him because he's going to be in a spiritual level higher than all of them. That is a problem. That is not anymore just a dream about physical materialistic fulfillment. This is already you're touching on the core of spirituality and pointing out that you will be on a higher spiritual level than all of them combined together, that they all will come down and bow down to your self, to your higher level of spirituality. That's already disturbing. Here, the hatred turns into jealousy. And this is what I want to talk about. What is this jealousy suddenly here? In order to understand this jealousy, I would like to talk about jealousy for a moment. Jealousy, envy, is a very, very powerful thing. From the beginning of book of Genesis until today, until this week's Parsha, in every single Parsha, we had a story of rivalry. We have a good guy and a bad guy. Okay? In the first Parsha, Vayeshev, we have Adam and Eve against the evil serpent. We have Abel, the righteous, against Cain, his brother, who is evil and a murderer. So we have a good guy and we have a bad guy. Parshas Noach, we have Noach, who is a tzaddik, innocent, and we have the people of his generation who are evil. Or later on, we have Noach against his grandson and his son, Ham. Again, we have the good guy and we have the bad guy. Parshas Lech Lecho, again, we have a good guy and a bad guy. We have Avraham and we have Pharaoh, who kidnapped Sarah. Or we have Avraham against Lot. We have a good guy and we have a bad guy. Parshas Chaye Sarah, Vayera. We have the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. We have the bad guys. And we have Lot, who is a better guy, who is a good guy. We have Avraham. Then Parshas Toldos, we have Yaakov against Esav. Or we have Yitzchak against Avimelech. Avimelech kidnaps Rebecca, and Yitzchak is the good guy. Avimelech is the perpetrator. We have a good guy and a bad guy. Now, Last week's Parsha, we have Lavan versus Yaakov. This is the Parshas Vayeshev. After that, we have Lavan versus Yaakov. You know, where Yaakov comes an innocent man who wants to get married, and his father-in-law keeps on deceiving him and lying to him, and so on and so forth. Again, we have a good guy and a bad guy. In the last week's Parsha, again, we have Yaakov versus Esav, the whole story of the unfolding of that. Comes to Parshas Vayeshev, we have perpetrators. We have brothers who want to murder their brother. But there's no more good guy and bad guy. They are all good. It's a good guy against a good guy. It's the holy tribes of Hashem, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Sachar, Zvulun, all of them holy, righteous people, confronted with their brother Yosef. So it's good against good. I don't know which side to take in the story. Yosef is being extremely disturbing. He's tattletaling at his brothers. He's telling his father all those bad things. He points out those dreams that really causes some form of inferiority between him and his brothers, telling them that he will be sustaining them, he will come down and bow to him. Suddenly, in Parshas Vayeshev, we are suddenly perplexed with which side of the people, or which side. Obviously, we are all on the side of Yosef. Naturally, we all feel bad for that one brother who is being ganged up by all the other brothers, and he's younger than all of them. But at the same time, we are thinking about the characters who are at play here. We have tzaddikim against a tzaddik. Something is strange over here. I mean, last week's parsha, we have the people of Shem, that are obviously evil, and Shem himself, who is a rapist, against Yaakov and his family. We say, okay, Shimon and Levi, you go, you knocked out their teeth, you destroyed the city. You kind of like feel good that Shimon and Levi did what they had to do to save their sister from the hands of that rapist. But this week's parsha, we suddenly are found in a problem. We're in a pickle. We have Yosef, and we have the brothers who are also righteous. Which side, who is right? And suddenly we are reading about the brothers that they are haters. They are dealing with a very, very negative character trait called hatred. 3 times the Torah tells us they hate him even more, they hate him even more. And then we say they were jealous of him. Hatred, jealousy. This is very, very powerful, negative character traits to have. Hate is big. Jealousy. There is one of the commentaries of the Kabbalists, the Shalah, says that the house of Esav is metaphorically is like straw. The hoyo bes Esav lekash. We read it in the Haftorah last week. Avadia, the prophet, says that the house of Esau is metaphorically like straw. The house of Yaakov is fire. The house of Esav is like straw. And one spark of Yaakov could burn down the whole straw and hay of what Esav is. The word for straw in Hebrew is kash. Kash. Yeah. What are the 2 letters kash? Puf and shin. Puf is kina. Kina means jealousy. Shin means sina, hatred. That Esav, the entire being of Esav, is kash, is jealousy and hatred. And here suddenly we have the brothers of Yosef are suddenly dealing with kina and sina, with kash. Suddenly they are dealing with hatred and jealousy. And the Torah is not shying away or hiding that story. The Torah is really writing about it. They hated him, and then they hated him even more, and then they hated him even more, and then they were jealous of him. The Torah is basically telling us the sad story of exile, where exile is, where suddenly the Jew is under the dominance of the non-Jew. The story of Yosef and his brothers is the beginning of the exile of the Jewish people. Yeah. And the exile of the Jewish people is the Jew falls under the hands of Esav, and he starts with the attributes of Esav, that is hatred and jealousy. Obviously, we all know that the last exile that we are in right now, it is close to 2,000 years, came as a result of baseless hatred and jealousy that existed during the Second Temple era. And Mashiach will only come when we are correcting that problem of hatred and jealousy amongst each other. And this is the Avas Israel, the love of a fellow, that we're going to learn to love each other. And we're going to learn to remove jealousy from one another and embrace one another. This is what's going to bring the coming of Mashiach. The beginning of this history of hatred and jealousy, it begins with the story of Yaakov and Esav, and we have a situation, and this is the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev, of going down to exile. Yosef is the first one to go down to Egypt. The exile of the Jewish people is going to start, and what happens in the beginning of the era of exile is that we are suddenly acquiring the kash, the kina and the sina, the jealousy and the hatred. So what I want to focus on right now is about what we see in all the parshas until here is all really stories of jealousy. If it's the jealousy of the serpent when he's watching Adam and Eve and he wants to defile them, if it's the jealousy of Cain against Abel when he sees that Abel's offering was accepted and not his, all the way down to the jealousy of Yaakov and Esav, where Esav is jealous that Yaakov took the blessings, and Esav is jealous of Yaakov that he's got the right of the firstborn. All the stories of all of them is all expressions of hatred and a certain form of jealousy. The idea of jealousy is a negative. Yeah, jealousy is a negative. There is actually one of the 10 commandments. The last one of the 10 commandments is Lo Sachmod. You're not allowed to be jealous. Yeah, and it comes in the same line of you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not commit adultery, and then it says you shall not covet. So the 10th commandment of the 10 commandments is a commandment, a prohibition against jealousy and envy and coveting something that someone else has. Now, it's interesting when you look at the 10th commandment, the 10th commandment says, you shall not covet, and it gives you a whole list. The house of your fellow brother, and the wife of your fellow brother, his ox, his donkey, and then it says, and all that your brother has. So if you want to tell us all that your brother has, why do you give us a list? His house, his wife, his ox, his donkey. To say, do not covet anything your father has, your fellow brother has. So I saw a beautiful commentary says as follows. He says, sometimes we watch a person and we say, wow, this guy is really, he has a beautiful wife. And we start coveting. Or the guy has a beautiful house. Wow, I'm so jealous of him. But the point is that if you look just at his wife or just at his house, there is something that you can get jealous of. But if you look at what else he has in his life, on all that your brother has, then the jealousy goes away. You don't know the whole story. I mean, he has a beautiful house, but who knows what happens in that house? If you know everything your brother has, then suddenly the jealousy goes away. But anyways, what the point is that we have a prohibition against jealousy. We have a clear prohibition in the Torah, Leisachmoid. What happened over here with the brothers that suddenly are becoming jealous? I want to take you back to what happened 2 parshas ago. There's another story of jealousy. Vatekane Rochel be'achoiso. Rochel becomes jealous of her sister. Remember the story? Take you back 2 weeks ago. For those of you who your short-term memory is still functioning, 2 weeks ago we were reading about Yaakov marrying Rachel, and then he wakes up in the morning and he finds out that he's married to Leah. And then Leah starts giving birth to children, and she has a lot of kids. Yaakov's marries Rachel, and Rachel cannot have children. Rachel tries giving her maid to Yaakov, and the maids give birth to 2 children, but Rachel doesn't get pregnant. Then Leah sees the same thing. She gives her maid to Yaakov, and they have another 2 children, and Rachel is still not pregnant. Then it comes a very painful set of verses. Rachel becomes burning jealous on her sister. And she turns to Yaakov and she starts really pouring her heart out. And she says to Yaakov, if you don't give me a child, I'm going to die. And Yaakov gets upset. Yaakov gets angry at Rachel, and he says to her, am I God who holds back a child from you? That's the whole exchange. We once taught a whole class about this exchange. I'm not going to spend our time here, but what we see over there comes a moment of deep jealousy that Rachel has towards her sister. And so far, that jealousy is that she says, if you're not giving me what I'm jealous of, I'm dying. Rashi brings from the Medrash, what was she jealous of? 1 second, Rachel is not a jealous person. We all know that Rachel is not a jealous person. We know what Rachel did at the night of her wedding when she found out that her father is going to send her sister into the room instead of her. You all remember what she did. Yaakov knew that his father-in-law is going to deceive him. He knew it. He felt it in his bones. So he made up with Rachel signs. Basically, when she comes into the tent at the night of the wedding, he made up with her a sign that she will whisper in his ears the word Hannah, also a very famous Jewish name, Hannah. Hannah means Chala, Neir, Chala, Nida, Adlokas, and Neir, those 3 mitzvahs that are for women. That this is when you whisper in his ear, so he knows it's her. But what happened was, Rachel sees that her father-in-law is going to send Leil into the tent. What does she do? She calls over Leil and she says, when you come into the tent, whisper into his ears, Hannah. She tells her sister the secret signs that her beloved gave her for the night of the wedding. That's not how a jealous person behaves. That's the opposite of a jealous person. Rachel is actually the symbol of a person who is not jealous. Suddenly, Rachel is being confronted, and the Torah tells us, Vatekane Rachel ba'achoisa. Rachel was jealous of her sister. So 1 second, are you a jealous person or aren't you? Comes Rashi and tells us 2 words. On the word she was jealous, Rashi says, B'maasel hatoivim. She was jealous on Leah's good deeds. She wasn't jealous that Leah is giving birth to babies. Her jealousy was, my sister must be so righteous and such a good person, so much better than me, that God has blessed her with all these blessings. She must have done something so holy, so positive, so good. I am jealous. Why can't I reach that level that my sister has reached? That form of jealousy, actually, we see later on in the Torah we have the story of Korach. Remember Korach? Korach is the one who makes the rebellions against Moshe. Famous story where he turns and he's jealous. Why is Moshe receiving this greatness? Why is Aaron receiving the greatness and I am left out? He's making a whole rebellion and he ends up in the ground. Korach is confronted with a lot of jealousy. But over there, in the story of Korach, there is a verse where Korach is talking to, where Moshe goes to talk to Korach's group, to the entire gang over there. And he says, Shimu no bnei Levi, listen to me, the children of Levi. Now, it doesn't say what he was speaking to them about. He only says that he went and he talked to him. Rashi comes and he tells us a secret. What was Moshe telling Korach and his brothers? He said to Korach, I wish I would have been a Kohen Gadol. And I'm not. The same thing you are wishing for yourself, I have the same wish. I am also unhappy. Why did God not give me that gift of going into the Holy of Holiest and being in that space of ultimate greatness? I'm jealous. I'm also jealous. In other words, Moshe sympathizes with their jealousy in a way of understanding is jealousy. I have the same jealousy you have. Now here comes the enlightening moment when you recognize what's going on over here. When does jealousy become jealousy? Jealousy gets created when there is a person that you have grown up with on the same level for a very long time. And suddenly that person reached a heights that was much greater that you reached. Korach grew up with Moshe and Aaron. He was in the same school. They went to the same cheder. They had the same family, the same grandfather, the same uncles. And suddenly he's looking up and he says, Moshe is the Rabbi. Aaron is the high priest. Kehat is carrying the Ark of Covenant. Itzar, Gershom is carrying the tapestries and the tabernacle. Merari is carrying the woods and the beams, and I am left out. That is a source of jealousy. Jealousy is when you are on the same level of someone, like Rachel and Leah are two sisters, but suddenly Leah becomes the matriarch of 6 children, and I didn't have even one child. Jealousy happens from something that in your mind is supposed to be attainable. We are supposed to be on the same level. And look at this, suddenly, boom, you're flying away. Suddenly you are becoming this great guy. We were in the same place. The Gemara says, Bakoil miskanod. A human being is jealous of everyone. So far, the Talmud says that every craftsman carries in his heart a certain sense of jealousy and hatred towards someone who is doing the same craft as him. If you are a musician, somewhere in your heart you have jealousy of other musicians. If you are a lawyer, somewhere in your heart you are jealous and a little bit hateful of other lawyers. Consciously, subconsciously. That's how human nature is. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just how it is. You know what a person is not jealous of? The Talmud tells us there are 2 people that we are not jealous of. Our children and our students. This is the only 2 people that we don't have any jealousy towards. When you see your son being successful, more successful than you, more incredible that you ever intended. The only thing you do is you're quelling. The only thing is you're having nachas. Look at my son. Look what a lawyer turned out to be. Look what a rabbi he became. I was a rabbi in Issaquah. My son is now our biggest rabbi. The greatest joy and nachas by a person. Same thing also a student. Someone who has a student who even does the same thing that he does. A person is not jealous of his students. Why is it? Because your child and your student, inherently, you know, they are never on the same level as you. You're always going to be the father, and he's always going to be the son. You're always going to be the Rabbi, and he's always going to be your disciple. The hierarchy is very, very clear cut. Yaakov is never jealous of Yosef. The brothers are. When they suddenly hear the second dream, and they find out that that brother who grows up with him in the same house, who comes from the same dad, all of that, suddenly that brother becomes on a higher spiritual level than them, now comes hate, now comes jealousy. Till now, there is reasons for hatred. He's telling stories about them. He's telling the father all the bad things that they do. All of that, reasons for hatred. Jealousy happens the moment they find out that he is reaching that spiritual level, that spiritual heights that they could never attain. That second dream is what really creates that rift between them. Seriously? Are you in basically telling us that you are going to be that high spiritual level, and we, as a sun and a moon and a stars, as high spirits, we are going to bow down to you? Your spirituality will be greater than ours? Now we are jealous. Now we are jealous. That becomes a source of jealousy. But there is a jealousy that actually is very, very holy and actually recommended. And actually more of that jealousy exists, the world becomes a better place. Ethics of Our Fathers, those of you who know the book, Pirkei Avot, highly recommended to study in depth. Ethics of Our Fathers, it says, Akino ve'ataiva ve'akoved moitzim esodom min olam. Jealousy, lusting, and looking for respect and honor drives a person out of the world. Pretty obvious. People who are jealous have no life. People who are always lusting and always craving another piece of food or another, are always tormented by their addiction. And the same thing also, people who always look for respect. They want people to respect them and honor them. There's always disappointment waiting for you around the corner. So the Talmud says that these three things literally drives a person out of the world. Jealousy is one of them. And then in the same book, it tells us, Kina Seifrim, when there is jealousy among scholars, Tarbe Chochma. Jealousy among scholars actually causes wisdom to increase. The Rebbe in Hayom Yom, that is a little pamphlet that the Rebbe created exactly 80 years ago. The Rebbe created a book that was supposed to be a diary, that every day in the diary had a saying. And it's only for that year, 1943 till 1944. So 1 year from Yutas Kislev 1943 until Erev Yutas Kislev 1943. Actually, it's all 1943. And in the Yutas Kislev Hayom Yom, one of the Hayom Yoms one of the days, there's a saying as follows. And it says that regarding holiness, regarding kedusha, things that are holy and spiritual, we always have to look at someone that's better than us and higher than us and envy and be jealous of that person's achievements and accomplishments. And at material matters, we always have to look at the one that is less than us and give gratitude to Hashem for the good that we have. So being happy in your lot, being happy with what you have, is only regarding materialistic matters. When it comes to spirituality, jealousy becomes a driving force. Jealousy, when we look at someone who is actually achieved a greater level of scholarliness than us, a person who actually achieved spiritual heights. We went to the same school. We grew up together. And look, he's doing so well. He's learning, he's davening, he's doing so many more mitzvahs. Usually what happens is it becomes a catalyst for us to really force ourselves to become better and stronger and more powerful. It's a jealousy that becomes a driving force in raising our bar and lifting up that mark and really trying to do better. Michael just mentioned before about placing the names of donors on the donor wall. And it says their name, and it says the amount of money they gave. And people look at it and they say, I don't need it. I don't need my name should be written on it. And the Rebbe brings always from the Rashba, from the halacha, that says that the opposite. We have to emphasize the people who give tzedakah and write out their name, because there's always someone who knows someone. And he looks at that wall and he says, if you gave this amount of money, I could definitely give a lot more than you. So it's creating a holy sense of jealousy. It creates a jealousy that drives a person to higher levels that the person is in, basically saying to himself, if he can do this mitzvah, I could do probably a lot more than I'm doing it. Not because the other person is little, because the other person just raised the bar on giving, charity, or the other person raised the bar on the intensity of prayer or the growing in Torah knowledge. You want to have more jealousy so you could drive yourself to more heights. You know, you always want to have, instead of being the best, you always want to look up to the best and emulate and grow, because when that person fails, you always can look up and say, I can reach a higher level. I can reach better. I can do better. It's a driving force, that jealousy. What happens with the Rachel, when she becomes jealous of her sister, you know what happens to her? Her jealousy was in the good deeds of her sister. When she looks at herself and her situation and seeing that she wasn't blessed with children, but as a result of that, what happens? She starts praying more intensely. And she's blessed with that wondrous child, that Vayeshev, who later on becomes the prince of his brothers. And she has Binyamin. The jealousy and the envy is not a negative jealousy of envy of Cain towards Abel, who causes him to murder, or the jealousy and envy of the brothers towards Yosef, who cause him to want to throw him into a pit or sell him as a slave. That's the negative jealousy and hatred. Jealousy carries in it a great spirit, that when jealousy is used within the right context, jealousy becomes a very, very powerful driving force. In a classroom, a teacher puts certain children on a pedestal, and he creates a certain jealousy among other students to want to grow, obviously removing the ego of jealousy. staying loyal to the spirit of jealousy, a healthy jealousy, a spirit of jealousy, a jealousy that Moshe carried towards his brother Aaron. Why is Aaron a Cohen and not me? That means I can do better. I'm going to be better. Obviously, I can't attain that level, but I have someone to look up to. Korach, on the other end, takes the jealousy in the negative, and that causes him to get buried under the jealousy and lose everything as a result of jealousy. What the teaching over here comes out to be, and this is really powerful, the brothers had an opportunity to look at Yosef and see the greatness that Yosef reached, and they would maybe rise above themselves and reach a certain higher level. But again, the story of Yosef and his brothers is the beginning of exile. This is the time when jealousy only is a negative force. It's hatred and more hatred. And eventually it led, because of that spiritual shift, to a place of deep jealousy that drives them into action to do something that was irreversible, that they had to pay the price for it. With the beginning of exile of the Jewish people starts as a result of that, where brothers almost murdered their brother. But as the story evolves, and as we see as the story comes into fruition later on, the jealousy goes away and it becomes a driving force of growth. As we see Yosef's own children, Ephraim and Menashe, two opposites, where Yaakov says to them before he dies that the Jewish people will bless their children. May they be like Ephraim and Menashe. Why? What is the blessing? Ephraim and Menashe are two opposites. Menashe is a dealer. Menashe is a leader. Menashe is a person who runs the country side by side with his father. Ephraim is a Torah scholar. Ephraim learns. Ephraim is a quiet guy. But Ephraim and Menashe together become the example how two brothers, two human beings, can be such opposite, but at the same time, there's no jealousy, there's no hatred between them. They become the source of blessings for the future of the Jewish people. Yosef's children. Yosef, who was a product of such hatred and such jealousy, raises two children that one complements the other one. So far that when Yaakov needs to have a source of blessings for the Jewish people, he says, may the children of Israel be and bless themselves to be like Ephraim and Menashe. Because Ephraim and Menashe took the jealousy to a place of one complementing and raising each other to higher heights, and that resulted in being a source of blessing. You know, the prohibition of Leisachmoid, not to covet, there's a Even Ezra who says the poor man does not covet the daughter of the king. Coveting something, being jealous of something, is always with on your level. There's someone on the same plane as you, this is when you can covet. But there are certain things that are so unrealistic and unattainable that I don't even covet. It's not even possible for me to be jealous of it. It's not even in my realms. When it comes to the good in the world, good behavior, good character traits, we always have to look up. Who does it better than me? Who can I look up to and be deeply jealous of? So jealous that I want to be exactly like him or even better than him. That's called holy jealousy. It's a jealousy that makes you a better person. It's a jealousy that causes you to dig deeper and finding greater capabilities in yourself. There's a letter that a boy writes to the Rabbi that he's in yeshiva and he's jealous of his friend. And the Rabbi writes him back, may you be blessed with a lot more jealousy that you have already. Very shocking blessing, because that jealousy will cause you to become a better Torah scholar. That jealousy will cause you to spend more time in learning so you can be better than your friend. This is good jealousy. This is holy. This is a jealousy that makes the world a holier and better place. It makes the world a much better place because we have such jealous people here. We are entering the holiday of Hanukkah. Next Sunday night, we're going to light the first Hanukkah candle. Hanukkah is the holiday where we always look up. First night, we light one candle, but the second night, we light already two. And the third night, we light three. Every night, we increase. We are not satisfied with that first candle that we lit, even though it was enough. We lit the first candle and it was enough. We had light. It comes the second night and we see that the sun is setting and it's still dark. We go and we increase in light. We had a second candle. That is the holy jealousy we're talking about. A jealousy that causes us to increase in light. We always see the potentialities that we didn't execute yet. Those gifts and special things that we have in ourselves, that we look up and we see someone else already doing it, and we say to ourselves, I wish I can be like him. I wish, and I'm going to do everything I can to learn from that person, to be as amazing as he is. So when you look at that campaign now and you see people giving money more than you gave and you feel jealous, why can't I go and give that bigger? It's there for a reason, in order to create some type of a jealousy of people saying, if Mr. So-and-so gave, I will give more than him. And that's good. It's making the world a better place, a more generous place, a place where more good there is. So just to conclude tonight's class, now that the point of this class is to speak about our campaign, even though it's always good to talk about giving tzedakah. Tzedakah is that mitzvah that brings the Mashiach, Tzion b'mishpat. Father, we know that Tzion will be redeemed through charity. That's not about the point of this class. The point of this class was to point out the deviation of jealousy and the power that holy jealousy carries in it. We went through the entire history from Adam and Eve all the way to Yosef and his brothers and Ephraim and Manasseh to see what the powers of jealousies are in the negative, and how much more so when jealousy becomes holy and pure, what a driving force it becomes, and what a source of blessing it is. So God Almighty should all bless us to have a good dose of holy jealousy. We should all be blessed to see the good in someone else. And not just to see the good in someone else, here comes the jealousy point, to want to emulate it, to want to be like him, to want to grow, not to be satisfied with the amount of good that you are in already. I want to get better. I want to be the best, and I can be the best. Look, this is a classmate of mine. This is a brother of mine. This is someone that I grew up with. Look how incredible he is. I want to be like him. I'm so jealous of him. I want to sit down and learn more now, so I'm not left behind. God Almighty bless us by fixing jealousy, by fixing hatred. Kash, spoke about kina and sina. Then we're going to be meriting the coming of Mashiach, and there's going to be only love and good speedily in our days. Amen.